Good evening and welcome to the December 9th Planning Board meeting of the Town of Raymond. The Planning Board will come to order. The board does have a quorum and we'll start with roll call. Sheila, would you start?
Sheila Burke.
Greg Foster.
Robert O'Neill.
Bill Priest.
And with us this evening is Jim Seymour from Planning, Stephanie Carver from Planning, and Chris from Code Enforcement. This is a public proceeding, and unless the board specifically votes to go into executive session, you have the right to hear everything that is being said and to look at all of the exhibits that are presented. Please notify the chairman if you are unable to hear or to see. The board works from a public agenda, and we will be considering tonight's items in the following order. We have two past minutes to review, and then approval of draft warrants and some proposed changes to the ordinances with any planner communications to follow. In each instance, the burden is upon the applicant to demonstrate compliance with provisions of the applicable ordinances. Since we have no applications, I'm going to skip all this other stuff and end with all persons speaking, including representatives of the applicant and members of the public, are asked to stand, state their name, address, and affiliation with the topic, and all persons speaking shall address the chairman. All right. So let's start with the minutes of October 14th, 2015.
I have a minor correction.
Go right ahead, Sheila.
On page 2B, stormwater calculations, second paragraph, Ms. Burke either pointed or questioned, but we can't have both. So drop either pointed or questioned. Let's just drop out pointed. Ms. Burke questioned the inconsistent use. And in appellant deadlines, Mary Costigan, to draw up from 30 days. How about to change language from 30 days to 45 days? Just try to make that a little more Englishy. And that's it.
Anybody else with the minutes?
Move to accept minutes as amended.
I second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
3 and 1 abstention. Passes.
One minor housekeeping on the November 17th minutes also.
Go ahead, Sheila.
Second page, motion, Sheila Burke moved that the town warrant include the recommendations in the September 1st. That's it.
Would be a second.
Second. Well, this is the extra one. Help. Ken, how do we only really have 2 voting members for the minutes. I was not really present for most of this. Is that, can we pass them with 2?
I don't think so. I think you have to have 3.
I think we have to have 3.
The next meeting.
So we're going to have to,
Wait till,
either Bruce shows up or,
correct.
yeah, so we're going to have to,
hold them till next meeting.
yeah, so we're going to have to table these till the next meeting. Yeah, you, yep. Well, now, wait a minute, isn't this when you showed up here?
Yeah, I was here at 7:15.
Yeah, which is fine, because that's actually,
We started late.
we started late.
Yeah, we did.
Right.
So we're just going to add you to the present list.
So you untabling.
Untable it. We never voted on it, so we were okay.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
And I'm abstaining.
My
so
God,
we've
you got 2 things.
3-0-1.
Whoa.
We're up to adjournment. Sorry. All right, our draft warrants. We're going to take these Article 1, 2, 3 at a time. We don't do Article 1.
We could start with John Giles, Sebago Technics, and have him do his presentation first.
Right.
And
Sounds
then
good.
have us do the warrant second.
Good evening. My name is John Giles. I'm with Sebago Technics, the town's mapping contractor. And I'm here tonight just to go over and answer any questions. The proposed changes to the town's zoning map. On the left, we have the existing zoning map that was approved in 2014. And then on the right, we have the draft map, including changes we've made in revamping some of the natural resource-based zoning. that I'm presenting for your consideration tonight. And then I think next month we're moving to, I guess, final approval of a draft that would then be presented at the town meeting for approval by the voters. The biggest changes, just to point out real quick, the biggest changes in the map have been, so we looked at the natural resource-based zoning to see how did it originally come about to be placed on the map, what was the basis for it. There were some changes to the state Chapter 1000 guidelines for inland wading waterfowl habitat data. Raymond does not have many areas of that type of habitat data. There are some down here on the Cape. Those areas has not been discussed removing them from the map, so we've left them on there for now. Really, that's the only change done at the state level to Chapter 1000 that would have allowed us to perhaps modify by removal some of the RP zoned areas in the town. In examining Chapter 1000 and the town's ordinance, though, we did find that there were a number of freshwater wetlands that were not previously shown on the map that are large enough to actually have a 250-foot shoreline buffer around them, with the designation typically of limited residential 1 applied to it. So if you look at this as the existing map, this is the proposed changes. You'll notice up through here and here and here there are some new additional wetlands depicted on the map that have shoreline buffers around them. These wetlands we actually could see in aerial photography, and we have mapped them from the aerial photography. The exact boundaries of those wetlands may differ slightly from what is shown here on the map if someone were to go out on the ground and actually do a wetlands delineation of them as part of, say, a site plan process or subdivision process. But what we've concentrated on is just trying to get the map into compliance with existing Chapter 1000 rules at the state level, but also that are in the current accepted town ordinances. There is a couple possible tweaks to the map that will be small, based on some guidance I just got recently from the Maine DEP about RP zones within the shoreline zone. But I don't anticipate that that'll have a major impact on the map or change it substantially from the way it's presented here tonight.
Okay.
The one area we have not addressed fully yet is steep sloped areas. We ran into some technical issues with the data. In the past, slopes have always been determined typically through USGS quad sheets with 10 or 20 foot contours. It's a fairly gross scale of contours. What we have now is 2 foot contours through a state acquired data set. We're actually able to use 2 foot contours, and the resolution through the 2 foot contours actually creates an interesting effect in some areas where you almost have like a terraced effect, where you go from steep slope to not steep slope to not steep slope. And in terms of trying to determine what's a large contiguous area of sustained slopes at 25%, we're going to need to look at that a little further and maybe talk to the DEP at some point about that. But I'm not proposing any of those changes in this year's map.
Was that done by aerial photography as well?
It was done with a technology called LiDAR, which is basically a laser scanner flown on the bottom of an airplane, and it scans the terrain, and it's good to about 6 inches vertically. So it's pretty accurate stuff. We use it a lot of the time in our own work, both for towns but also in some site work. It's proven very reliable. So it's tremendously more. A much greater resolution of elevation and topography than we've ever had through the USGS quad sheets.
And the laser gets through the canopy?
Yep. Yeah, even in fairly dense pine stands, when we've tested it on the ground, we can be within easily 6 inches or better. Now, the density of coverage in a dense vegetated stand like a pine or evergreen isn't as great as, say, out in an open area, but they try to fly this stuff when there are no leaves on the trees, so they get the best possible coverage. Typically in the spring, sometimes in the fall.
So many of the areas that we're now seeing are really the result of better technology to address what's out there.
Or and we have through better technology, we're able to see things that weren't there before. In the past, a lot of the natural resource-based areas were based on the USGS topo maps. And now with ortho photos like you see in Google Earth, LiDAR data, we're actually able to check ground conditions to a greater degree from available mapping data and not have to go out on the ground.
Does anybody know how this is going to impact the landowners?
Well, in the case of some of these situations here where they're freshwater wetlands, if they had gone through a development review process, those wetlands would have been there anyways. This isn't creating something that isn't there on the ground. In the case of some of these wetlands that are going to be on the map now that have the shoreline buffers around it, that would present an additional zoning requirement on those lots. But it would be a zoning requirement that would be there and probably discovered through the site plan review process anyways. What this attempts to do is actually present to everyone up front before people start down the road of developing their property a better and more reflective view of existing conditions than we've been able to present in the past.
Are those new wetlands forested wetlands as opposed to?
They are not forested wet. These are, if you were to see these in an aerial photo, they're quite obviously low-lying, vegetated, flat areas with water visible and stuff. Just when the USGS created the quad sheets 20, 30, 40 years ago, they just didn't pick those up when they did the mapping.
Greg, the ones behind your house that's farm log.
Yeah.
So a lot of those we've known about, but now they'll have more protection. And if they weren't going to do a development in there, it's a better tool for me or any staff member to, if they're building a home in there, there are cutting restrictions, and there's going to be more protection for that wetland, which is a good thing.
Yeah, I do though think that we need, in our summary for this, wherever we get to that stage, we should make sure that we, on the selling points, we make sure that we note that there really is no change to the landowner. All we're doing is changing documentation.
Well,
Because it's everything that is going to be done, still we're going to be doing everything on the ground, right? We're still going to.
correct.
So,
The only thing that would change if you go from a rural to a shoreline zone around that wetland, there are cutting restrictions.
right.
You can
but there-
still do timber harvesting and so forth, but it's more restrictive than the rural zone. So a homeowner, he could be cutting right up to the edge of that wetland right now without us knowing it. Now they'll have to get a permit if you're within 100 feet. And you won't be able to create openings more than 250 feet, square feet, 250 feet back.
So perhaps I misspoke.
That's based on.
Well, you didn't. You spoke correctly on a
Right.
development, we would know about it. But for a single-family home, we don't have all that wetland data.
Okay.
That's what I was referring to.
Okay.
I think the impact's gonna be minimal, but I think it does give more protection towards the wetland, that was my point.
Right. Oh, I agree with you. Do we know?
And these are wetlands that should have been on the map to start with. Yeah.
So I think the point is, we can talk about minimal impact, and it does reflect reality on the ground. But it's a great tool for staff to know what's out there. So it might change how Chris
Yeah.
looks at that area in advance, or if he gets a report of harvesting and he sees it's in that area, he might venture out there and take a look where maybe in the past he might not have.
And the flip side is it's also useful to the landowners because we're talking about things that are obvious and evident in publicly available, aerial imagery that, now the homeowner is aware or the landowner is aware there is something there, whereas in this map, they may be falsely led to believe
That
there wasn't anything to be concerned with.
Right.
And we can take those down if you want to look at them.
You know, I'm just trying to place it where,
It's Linda Dalis, that's some
Okay.
guy named Christians. Christian Chandler owns this piece.
and this
That
is,
one of them,
this is Valley, or this is?
this would be Ledge Hill.
Ledge Hill, okay.
Now, we're talking about, in this case, some additional wetlands showing up on the map that hadn't been there before. In other cases, through photo interpretation, if you'll notice this area, we've actually been able to reshape that to reflect a much smaller wetland than was shown in the original data that was based on USGS maps. I mean, a lot of the wetland data that you see on this map actually dates from the 1970s. They use Landsat imagery and USGS quad sheets to basically attempt to, for the first time, map wetlands in the United States on a state, regional, and nationwide basis. That data then got converted to digital data in the 80s and 90s, and it continues to be the basis for a lot of wetland mapping. But with the new aerial imagery, LiDAR, and other data sets, we're actually able to further refine those wetland outlines to reflect reality a little more. So in some cases, we're actually reducing the wetlands in size on the map. In other cases, we're
Just identifying.
identifying ones that weren't there
And
before.
just to reinforce,
Weren't
John, that
depicted
area
first.
that you just pointed to, because that shows up at resource protection, I've had a lot of applicants come in to, want to build, know what they could do, and we have had people on the ground doing wetland delineation, and it matches more closely to what you've got now. So that reinforces what you've done.
Yeah, and with the changes, if this map were to be adopted with the new changes, it also sets up a situation where if people are getting wetland delineations done as a part of a land development investigation or a project that they're working on, if they were to share that data with the town, we could easily remap that as an annual update, much like we do with the tax maps and the tax parcels. Again, to further refine that and take that data that the landowner has purchased and get it on the map finally, whereas in this form it was much more difficult to do. And really wasn't done in the past, but because you start doing edits in one little area and quickly you need some additional data, but that's what we've created here.
Any other questions?
Okay,
All right.
good,
John.
thank you.
Thank you very much.
Do you want me to leave those up, or shall I take them down and get them out of the way?
I don't think we're gonna need them. Do you guys
No.
want? I think we're okay, yeah.
Is there a smaller version of that in print now?
We don't have it yet, but we can get that for the next meeting, ahead of the meeting.
Yeah. Would you like smaller size ones or full size ones?
Yeah.
That size?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would probably like to have some full size.
Yes. Yes. And the official one will eventually be door size, so.
Come on, Chris, we're gonna issue magnifying glasses. That's-
All right, so do we wanna go to Article 3, shoreland zoning? Is that, move right
Yeah,
along- move right along in order?
yep.
I'd just like to compliment whoever wrote, we requested some paragraph summaries, and I'd like to say that scattered throughout here, I think it was very helpful. Thank you.
I followed Danielle's previous model,
Mhm.
not having actually written one before. So that was helpful. I do have, John graciously gave me a description for the work that he's done here, and I've plugged it in so far. I haven't plugged the map in yet, but, and it does address the comment that you made, where it basically talks about the fact that this is more precise information just based on new technology.
Okay,
And that, things that come through, well, it doesn't actually say site plan review, but it's more reliable for landowners.
All right.
So we do have some new text. We had a couple of typos that I went through, well, I will go through and fix. I'm not sure if any of you all found them, but let's see, any bigger changes? I think I think it's page 27. just above appeal procedure number 3, the paragraph above that's added in, it begins, the code enforcement officer may grant a variance. See that? There's a couple of changes that need to be made. I did change, I think actually on the second or third sentence that begins with the board shall restrict any variance granted. That
Mhm.
should actually be CEO. And the same holds true, the next sentence begins with the board may impose conditions on the variance. That should also be the CEO, so I'll change that.
You go to page 27?
Yeah,
It might be off a page because I
Yeah.
plugged in, what page do you have?
I don't know, I'm trying to find it.
I'm trying to find the,
I'm on 27.
What was the number?
It's, you know what?
Oh, it's on page 28,
Yeah, it's 28.
11B.
All right, so I'm one page
Oh,
behind.
okay.
No, that's not it.
no?
No,
Go, yeah, come back. It is, go back.
That one.
Yeah, it's, page 26. All right, so I'm a page ahead of you.
6.
G.
yeah, I see it.
G, there's 2 sentences in there that refer to the board having power, and it should be the CEO. So I'll make those changes.
What shall restrict? The CEO shall restrict.
Yeah.
Got it.
There was one more. There was an appeals.
Yeah, I kept confusing myself, jumping back between the 2 appeal procedures, and then I
I
lose
know.
track of what I was reading about and have to start again.
Yeah, the first appeals, language is in the shoreland zoning, section 16 administration, and
Right.
the second one is article 6.
Right.
It's confusing because
I
we're
know.
doing articles and then we're referring to articles. And I tried to keep that straight, as clear as I could, but I'm not sure if I accomplished that. Okay, so in the land use section of the appeals, which is probably 45 on yours. It's F, is it F? Do you have that?
Maybe 46, D,
46 or something.
F, 5%.
Yeah,
It's on page 46.
okay, so
Yeah,
46,
Yep.
that actually should be removed, number,
We
letter
had a
F.
discussion
Letter
about keeping all lot coverage and impervious at 15%.
Right.
Right, this is,
Not,
this
we,
allows for
remember the
extra
DEP
time.
said that
If
we
you go
could
up to
allow
20.
up to 20, and we decided we've got it 15% in the rest of the town, let's keep it consistent.
Right,
So this is language in the land use ordinance that's actually gonna be changed to reflect that. Everything else that staff had was, really just typos. We're gonna add the cemetery information as it was submitted, into the warrant. There's a few changes I spoke to with Chris. In the shoreland zoning, I had changed some letters, in reformatting the ordinance that I'm gonna go back and address, but it doesn't change anything substantial in the ordinance, it just changes some of the reference.
yeah.
So,
Okay, so
does
you're
anybody
back to-
else have anything that?
Just back to
they
the
would-
cemetery thing, so what did we finally decide? What are we doing on the cemetery language?
We're gonna leave it as it was submitted. It was
Right.
just housekeeping, it was just reorganizing the ordinance.
Yeah,
Format changes.
But you
Bruce
have,
had some questions about definitions of monuments, lots,
Right.
plots. They couldn't get together quick enough to get anything to us, so
Okay.
they'll address that next year. They're just gonna do the housekeeping things. And that's what their request is.
so, so the housekeeping things that just rearranges stuff around
correct.
Yes.
really doesn't solve any of the issues I think anybody reading that would have.
Correct.
So why even do it?
You have that option. We discussed that today.
Yeah, that's kind of my thought.
You can either just
Do it
leave it
all.
off and deal with it next year,
Right,
which may be the simplest thing to do rather than confuse
Yeah, that
people.
Right,
Yeah.
by
And then
bringing
come
it
back
here
next
again.
year, do it
When it's
right
done,
and get
right.
it done.
then right and,
Done right once.
Yeah.
right. Then, I mean, that
I'm in
makes-
agreement, I'm in
Okay,
agreement.
Yeah,
We
I
had
agree
that,
with that
staff
too.
had that discussion today at the office,
all right.
so.
So, Yeah, can we just stop it, or does it have, it's not one of our, I mean, it is, but it's not. Can we just stop it here, or do we have to send it unapproved, recommending not inclusion to the board, to the selectmen?
Well, we really haven't received a final
Yeah,
Right.
No, I just-
anything.
you don't have to recommend it.
So I don't think we have to
I don't think you have to
To-
move forward at all.
No.
do
Yeah, that's
anything.
right. Okay,
Maybe just relevant to instruct them that the board has discontinued review because of the situation. Just report that to the council, or the selectmen.
We can do that formally.
We can just write a paragraph.
We can do that.
you can do that,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
We can do that as staff.
Right.
Right.
okay, all right, so we're
Because
all
we
set.
haven't moved to do
You need a
anything
vote for
right
that, or
now.
are you comfortable going? Okay. Good. All right, sorry, Stephanie, good.
So with this, the next step is, if you have any changes or edits that you need to make.
I just have one question on the fire code. We haven't visited that in 2 or 3 months.
Yeah,
Have we given the fire department an opportunity just to review it, and make sure we're good with this? I'm not sure what the protocol is, but,
They will have an opportunity
Okay.
before the public hearing, and they'll
Yeah.
be present for the public hearing to
Okay.
answer questions and comments from the public.
And I don't think we've changed anything on the fire code that they haven't submitted to us.
We did,
No.
well,
We haven't,
it's pretty
It's
pretty much
literally-
verbatim what they asked.
it's
Yeah.
literally
Yeah.
cut and
Okay.
paste, yeah.
yep.
Most of theirs was just numbering, right?
Yeah, well, there was one or two commercial changes, I
There were a
think.
couple,
They
I
struck
dig
out
through my notes here.
there were a few things that refer to,
smoke detectors,
Right.
monoxide
yeah,
detectors.
and regulations.
Yeah, giving
that,
them the
they
authority.
actually
And
follow
updating
and
the
feel.
code to the current
Yeah.
codes that they were using.
Yeah. I mean, it's all pretty standard.
All right.
And again, I'm happy to give this to Chris and get this circulated among the staff that made the recommendations, and as the attorney as well. I'll have
Yeah, we need to
look
get
at
it to the town attorney before.
Yeah.
And when we
And-
Yep,
Before you get your packets, it'll be all approved by town attorneys, what the language is in warrants.
And are these going in as individual warrants, or are we submitting these in for one grouping?
we should send them in as individual warrants.
So you will, at the public hearing, after the public is closed on each article, vote to move it, to send it to the select board with your recommendation.
Yes, right. Because otherwise, if we lose one, we lose them all.
That's the danger. you know.
I
Right,
think that's what we've
we've
done
always
in
done
the
it in the
past.
past, yeah. Although I don't think there's anything that's really very contentious here. I mean, it's up to you guys, I mean, if you,
No, I agree, I think it's fine.
Vote on each.
do you, I mean, if you wanted to put it all in at
Yes.
one.
Yeah.
no,
No, I'm good.
I think
Right.
Probably should do it
It's
like,
wiser
that'd be
to do it
cluster them in smaller groups, but
Yeah.
yeah, I don't think, you know,
I mean, you're taking the whole shoreline zoning
Yeah,
as
that-
one article.
Right.
Yes,
You're
yeah,
taking
yeah.
the fire ordinance as one
Right.
article.
Right.
The
The
fees
appeals.
is one article.
Yep,
Correct.
the map is one
We've got
article.
6 of the map will be one,
Right,
and that's the way we've done it. I think it'd
Right.
yep,
be appropriate.
You know, and I agree,
Good.
there's nothing really controversial
No, I
about
think actually
things,
we've cleaned a lot of stuff up,
but- Right,
Mhm.
reorganized it and made it more consistent with the other ordinances.
right. And that's why I think the cemetery one would, if we really go over that in public, might just sow a lot of confusion,
I agree with that.
you know.
so I missed Mary's presentation, was there anything,
that was the appellate.
That was the
appeals.
appellate, the de novo review.
right,
That she said, you'd send the, anything from the planning board, go directly to Superior Court.
Right, and that's all included.
It's all in
here.
this.
It's in here.
There was
package.
some discussion at that meeting
It's
about
Article
the
6.
costs of, the burden of cost put on it, where it might be cheaper to go through the ZBA, but then ultimately you end up in court. Almost
Right.
every one of them ends up in court, so we're actually saving them time
A step.
and a step and costs by just allowing them going to court.
correct, okay,
And that's the way that most towns are now proceeding.
all right. So that thing those opening comments that I read, is that going to get revised, or is it now, are we in line with what I
We
read?
have to
every day?
revise the
We revise
it.
45-day appeals to,
Okay.
from 30 to 45.
Yep,
And then I'll have to take a look at it to see if there's any other edits we need to make for it, but
okay,
we wouldn't be doing that until these get approved.
Right, so it'd be after June.
So it'd be after June, then you
Yep,
change.
yep. right. But there's other things in there, I think we can,
We probably need to look at it.
yeah, like we haven't had people sign in since I've been on the board.
I didn't know that was a requirement.
I say it, I
You
say
do.
it every meeting,
That's right.
Chris.
You're right.
Don't you listen?
They're supposed to be
Apparently
signing,
not.
yeah, you're supposed to sign in, and then when you state your name and address. and-
Yeah, we haven't done that.
I've never seen
I kind of remember that way back.
No,
What-
that. Have you ever seen
I
that?
have
Yeah,
seen that.
I've had sign-in sheets when I go to.
You haven't seen it here, because I've been here longer than you, so it must have been someplace
Must have been
else.
at the selectmen's meeting.
I know in Casco, they sign in when they come in.
It's interesting.
Some of them, I go to Portland, South Portland, you don't typically see people sign in, but.
Where you've got somebody introducing himself and it's on the DVD, that's the record, so I don't
Well-
know that it's necessary to sign in.
Well, I would agree with you, but then if we don't want them to sign in,
Then we take it
we
out.
should take it off and not
Right,
tell them they
I
have to
agree.
sign in and then not let them sign in, so it's like.
Right.
It's probably just, it's probably just a doubling effect, because sometimes you don't, the spelling may be incorrect, or you may miss the address or something verbally. It is a good backup.
Well,
You
I'm
just
not
gotta be
saying,
consistent, I hear you.
right, I'm not saying not do it, but we wanna do it, we should leave it in and we should get a logbook or something that people should start signing in.
I agree.
Or should be part of the
Whatever you
minutes,
guys
or
wanna
should
do.
be part of the minutes or something, of the attendance sheet.
Yep. All right. So you really don't need anything from us on this. We're gonna set this, make the little bit of changes we just went through and
Yep.
set for public hearing, which we have a date yet?
You've got the schedule, I
Next.
handed it out to you for January.
You did?
Zoom
Do you have
pictures
extra one?
here.
I didn't have, I only got one.
Yep. Oh.
Daniel
No, I
grabbed
got
it,
mine.
passed it to me, I thought there was enough.
Are they online
Oh,
now?
you do? Yeah, I think this is
Online?
Bruce's.
This sheet?
Probably,
Yeah.
I don't even have a copy. Well, it's good. When is it? In January?
I have mine, but I'm not.
Good, you can have Bruce's.
January 13th is the actual meeting date.
It's going, Chris. I just looked at this. I thought it was our list of our meetings.
It is,
It is.
Yeah.
January,
Yes.
on the far right,
2015,
Yep.
16.
January 13th,
So
2016.
it wouldn't just be the date of the meeting? Is
Yes.
there a reason to
Could be.
have a new date?
There's not. We didn't usually do them the day of the meeting because we've had,
Other things on that.
applications.
Yeah.
But if we have nothing,
We don't have anything
Well, we'll
pending.
know by,
well, we need 30 days of notice, right?
tomorrow.
Tomorrow, there's nothing
There's
on the
nothing.
agenda.
Today.
We've got
Yeah.
something coming in the next month or two. The school's gonna be doing some upgrading of their turf
So
fields.
there's nothing scheduled
But
for
there's nothing
new
scheduled.
applications.
Okay, so why don't we just use that January 13th date as a public hearing date?
Can you get, we need 30 days notice, right, in the papers? Can we get that out in 30 days
Do we need 30 days?
for
We
public
need 2
hearing?
weeks
I thought it was
notice.
2 weeks.
So it's 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. No problem.
Yeah, that should be
Even
fine.
the holidays kinda mess it up.
But it's still legal.
Right. Yep, calendar doesn't change. Okay.
I mean,
I
I'd
mean,
feel
we're pretty much
differently if
there
we
with
had
the-
hot potato.
I have
Well,
very
we-
little to do
We
here.
have very
Yeah.
little to do, it's just
We
get
need the
it,
map, though.
we need the map from
So
John,
that-
we need to get
That could
this
be-
to the attorney,
Right.
and then get it out to you guys and get it out to the public.
So John would have to have the map, we'd have to advertise it probably right after Christmas. So
Right, 'cause
John
you'd
would
have
have
to
to
have
have
it
the
up.
map done in the next
You'd have to have
week
it up
and a
by the
half or so.
30th.
So that might be that could be an issue.
Well, I think
Well,
he's-
why don't we do this? Let's set that tentatively. You work behind the scenes, let us know if we can pull it off. If not,
When we can postpone it for a week.
Right.
yeah.
What do you think, Bob?
Yeah. Yeah, that's fine.
Keep it for the 13th, and if
If there's a problem,
we'll
We'll,
postpone it a week.
when do we have to have this to the selectmen?
March.
Is it March?
Yeah, March.
Oh, so we can,
March 1st?
You
or-
kinda got a buffer in there of
Yeah,
1
we're
month,
okay.
but it's,
right.
if we have a bad weather date or something,
Right,
you can
right.
throw
No,
everything
no.
off.
Well, or
Okay.
if there's changes from the public hearing.
Bob, I
Right.
remind you that the next Wednesday of the month, I'm just not available. I have another standing commitment. So if we
Yep.
push it a full week, I won't be able to attend.
Okay.
I don't
Maybe
think
2
John will
weeks.
have an issue getting.
I don't think he doesn't sound like he.
Sound like he was
He
just
sounded
about
like he
there.
was
Yeah.
close, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
I think the only thing that he was talking about wasn't quite ready was the steep slopes.
Which
And
is
that's
not,
something that can
right.
be done for the next
Right.
next round.
Right, but that's not gonna be ready in 2 weeks,
No,
or 3
that's
weeks,
not
so.
gonna be included anyway.
Right,
Right.
good.
I think what he's got, he's got. I think it's just a matter of getting copies and printed off.
All right, good.
Okay.
So we'll rely on staff to move us towards that date,
All right.
okay?
What else we got? What do you guys have, anything?
That's
No.
it.
You do have a couple people from the public. I don't know if they have anything they want to add, or if you want to listen to any comments or concerns they might have.
Are you on to discuss?
Raymond Cape residents?
Yeah.
I've got nothing, I thank you for having me.
Oh, thanks for coming.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Will we
I
adjourn?
have nothing to add. I'm sort of new to this scene, but I have been listening to the scene.
Second.
Sorry.
All right. Was there a motion to adjourn?
Yeah, it
Well,
was.
do we have any other
Seconded.
There's no other-
communications from you guys?
Well, all those in favor?
Aye.
Done.